So I want to welcome everyone today to today's webinar. And my name is Andi Gray. I'm president of Strategy Leaders. We're a business consulting firm. We've been around for about 25 years, and I'm the founder of the firm. And my hope is that everyone today will walk away with information that will help them with the growth and development of their businesses. We're going to give everybody just another minute to come in and get themselves started. Today we are going to do everything we can to gather information about who you are, where you are in your business, and things that you're looking to gain or learn about, so that we can also supply you with things that could be useful to you after this webinar. Robin, let me know if we should get started.
Okay, let me take a look. 1 second.
Okay.
I think probably 1 more minute and then we'll be ready to get started.
Okay, that sounds great. So one last run to the coffee machine for everybody, and we'll be ready to go. I hope that those of you who've been hard at work at your desks or in your offices or at home, wherever you may be, that you had a chance to get lunch. If you didn't, I hope you're going to use this as a chance to multitask and get some lunch in while you learn a little bit about running and growing successful businesses.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay, great. So Robin is our moderator for today, and Robin is going to be gathering questions from the chat box. If you'll notice in your webinar window, down with the chat function, there is a Q&A section. And if you have questions, please submit them in there. We'll probably go all the way through the webinar before we actually get to the questions. If there's something Robin really wants to get to sooner than that, she'll interrupt me. We also are going to be running polling questions throughout this webinar to get to know each other. And I would ask you to respond to each poll as quickly as you can, so that they're going to go up and then go down in pretty quick order. I want to assure everyone that all answers to the polls are anonymous, so feel free to speak the truth about what you're feeling about your business. And in fact, here comes the first polling question right off the bat. And while Robin's doing that, let me talk about the start of the business. So begin by using this polling question just to tell us about who you are, so that we can get to know everyone in the audience. And as we work on this polling question, once you complete it, it should come down off of your window and get out of the way. Just hit submit. For today, in terms of an agenda, we're going to talk about the stages of business development, why small to medium-sized businesses matter. Smbs is the acronym for small to medium-sized businesses. And we classically define these as between 0 and 300 employees. Some definitions will go as high as 500 employees. We're going to pretty much focus on that 300 and under. This group is also mostly privately held. We'll touch on that a little bit later on. We're going to, as we go through this webinar, talk about why Smbs consistently underperform and what you can do about it. We're going to take a three-way look at SMB development and how they grow over time and become more productive and profitable. And then lastly, we're going to take a quick look at consulting as a tool for growth and development for a business, and what to look for, and when you might find it appropriate. So Robin, do we have answers to our polling questions yet?
We do.
Okay, great. Let's just get to know each other a little bit. So we're talking mostly to business owners and some advisors to privately held businesses. Those are the people that have weighed in here. That's great. Then that's exactly who this discussion is meant for. So perfect audience targeting. Let's start with the classic definition of stages of business. These are 5 classic stages. Stages 1 and 2, the first 2 are privately held businesses, and that's where we're going to focus our discussion today. Stages 3, 4, and 5 are the public companies. These are the smallest numbers of companies operating, and this is where they go to outside investors to raise funds. They expand the human capital massively and ultimately get to a stage where they get broken up. So from stage 1, which is the small guy that started last week with an idea and a business, to the back end of an AT&T or an IBM, is that journey all the way through the 5 stages. Stage 4, we have a lot of companies that are stuck in stage 4 now. You think about, say, a Microsoft, and Amazon. The discussions are already beginning about should they be broken up, and if so, how. Again, we're going to focus on stage 1 and 2, and I'm going to make the case why we see those as important. And then we're going to focus on how to move companies from stage 1 to stage 2, which is where the work at Strategy Leaders is primarily focused. So why SMBs matter? It's because that's how we grow healthy U.S. economy, by increasing the survivability of small businesses. There are about 5.7 million firms with employees, and less than 1% of them have shares listed on the U.S. exchange. So as I said earlier, virtually all privately held. And they typically have highly concentrated ownership, and this encourages their owners to ensure long-term value is maximized. When I did the foundation work for Strategy Leaders, which I did at Columbia under the guidance of Professor Burchett, what he was looking at is shares held by people who work inside the company, ensures that the business interests of the company are protected. The owners are focused on decisions to preserve the business. And that's very different from what happens in publicly held businesses, where the shares of the business are held by people working in an auction market. So trading their shares in ups and downs with no long-term view. And why is this important? Well, for example, in the 2008 market collapse, we protected the big banks, we protected the insurance companies, we protected the automotive companies, and we didn't really pay any attention to the small to medium-sized businesses. And as a result, it took us nearly 10 years to get our economy back on track. And what we're trying to do, I believe at this juncture at the federal and state level, is now do everything possible to put in place the lessons we learned from 2008 and not make the same mistakes again, by focusing on the importance of small business and preserving and growing as many as we can. Why else do SMBs matter? Well, actually, this is where our country began. It was a great experiment in entrepreneurship. The Dutch East India Company challenged the kings and nobles' hold on trade and wealth, and they created a more equitable society of opportunity with a rich middle class that has served our country for hundreds of years. Today, we have millions of enterprising, risk-taking men and women in all walks of life, and they are at the center of that remarkable story that's the American dream and reality that is played out through entrepreneurship, of building wealth and generational opportunity. If you are more of a metrics person, so here's some metrics to take a look at. As I said earlier, they represent virtually all of the US employers. 98% of the firms that export goods. Over half of the sales in this country are done by small businesses. Half of our pre-tax profits are generated, as well as nearly half of our non-farm gross domestic product. Small to medium-sized businesses invest at twice the rate of their public counterparts, nearly 7% versus 4%. They make up half of the workforce in terms of numbers, and just under half the workforce in terms of dollars paid out in salaries and benefits and bonuses. They represent net new jobs for most people. The role that small to mid-sized businesses play primarily is putting our workforce together to work coming out of school at the start of their careers, and then also ensuring that they have meaningful work at the end of their careers, and that many people use to close the economic gap on their retirement funds, which may not be all that they wish they would be.
Andi, I think this is the perfect time for our next poll question.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
So let's talk about how COVID has affected everybody. Tell us a little bit about what your experience has been. And again, all of these answers are completely anonymous. So take a minute, quickly fill in your answers. We're going to pull this slide down in a minute. And in terms of why else small businesses are important, it's because they're contributors to the local community. What do I mean by that? We as business owners work with the business. We look our employees in the eye every day. We don't own 5 homes around the globe and a boat in the Mediterranean and take our eye off the ball of the business. We're not using company profits for ego-serving endeavors instead of paying our employees less than livable wage. We do stick around and support local organizations such as the Girl Scouts, soccer leagues, Little League, football. We run for local office. We join societies. We're focused on doing good work in the community and encouraging our employees to do the same. In addition, the money that is made through our small businesses, it tends to be made within the community and tends to stay close to home and as a result benefits the community. So let's take a look at, before I move on, let's just take a look at that last poll result.
Sure.
So some of you are well positioned to thrive. Some of you quickly pivoted, and I really, really want to congratulate you for doing that. Some have had a rough go in 2020 and are still working on the recovery. Don't give up. There are resources available, and I believe that more resources are coming. Everyone in this economic cycle understands how important it is to help you survive and succeed. So in general, let's take a look at how SMBs, or why SMBs consistently underperform. And Robin, if you want to throw up the next poll, we're actually going to ask you to tell us which of these issues are issues or have been issues for your business. And in terms of issues, we see the primary 10 as lack of plans, a short-term focus, lack of reserves and inadequate funding or bank planning, lack of structure, so the business sits on the owner's shoulders. The company runs out of knowledge and stalls. It doesn't know where to go to find help. There's lack of succession and replacement plans for key players. We don't have an exit strategy or a program for generational transfer. The owner, the business is owner dependent. And so if the business really starts to suffer when the owner gets distracted or for some reason is absent, in general, the company doesn't understand its success metrics. The owner isn't demanding enough of the business, so it's willing to let the business off the hook. And then there's also very often an unclear growth path. So Robin, do we have enough votes to throw this one up, or should we leave this up for another minute?
I think let's leave this up for a couple minutes, or for another couple seconds. People are still voting. Okay,
great. So get your votes in, and I'm going to go to the next slide to take a look at that one, because there are some other general challenges. The big issues in privately held companies include lack of owner liquidity. So the owner doesn't have all of the resources that he or she needs in order to back and support the company. The business tends to get over leveraged inside the business. So lines of credit and other leasing arrangements tend to start dominating the balance sheet. The owners and our entrepreneurs and as such tend to be hands-on managers. So if they can touch it, they can manage it, but don't have enough ability to manage at 2 or 3 arms lengths, we call it. They tend to have a shortage of systems and plans and communication to keep everybody playing nicely within the sandbox and informed about what's going on and following a systematic way of doing things. Very often SMBs lack management depth, so they can't go down 2 or 3 layers and have continuous movement within the organization. And then when distributions are done to the shareholders, those distributions are done in a way that tends to reduce the equity of the firm, which then contributes to having less of a balance sheet to be able to lend against in the future. So you want to bring the results up, Robin, and let's see what everybody thought the issues were for them. So the big one was lack of reserves and inadequate funding. And I would say that I wouldn't be surprised by that one, especially coming out of COVID. I would say it would be a big one, but there's also several other big ones in here. The lack of succession and replacement, exit strategy, generation transfer. I'm glad folks are talking about that or thinking about that as an issue, because that is one of the things that's critical to ensuring that the business survives from one generation to the next. Let's bring this down and let's go on and look at now a different way of looking at why SMBs consistently underperform. So when you look at the revenue curve, most privately held small businesses have some years up and some years down. So some good years, some not so good years. I'm sure that's kind of feeling pretty familiar to anybody who's been through the last year or two. And this slide shows the typical pattern of an SMB. And what happens, unfortunately, is that as the business goes up and down, at the same time, the profits are flatlining down towards the bottom and don't really make progress from year to year. We look at this and call this the waste rate. Why did we have the ups and downs? Sometimes it's black swans like COVID. Other times it's because a business takes on too much business one year and then stalls trying to digest it the next. Whatever the reason, this inconsistency in revenue production, the up and down waves, is what then turns into a waste rate that chews up the resources of the business. And as a result, then, as we showed on the earlier slide, profit tends to flatline at or near zero. And through this waste rate, what happens is that significant amounts of time, money, and effort are lost chasing the up and down cycles, and the business owner ends up working harder than they need to, making less than they could, and leaving a lot of money on the table when they exit, none of which is what we would wish for a business owner. So is there a better way? Absolutely. This is where business owners adopt a more deliberate, controlled offense-defense approach to running the business. They put in place plans and controls. They build cross-functional teams. They have forward-focused leadership, and the waste rate is then converted to profits. So instead of having the profits flatline here at the bottom, they now rise and follow the revenue track. What Professor Bidet, my professor at Columbia, talked about and what caught his attention was that very few companies actually make it from stage 1 to stage 2, even though lots of companies try. And his theory was that because there are such massive numbers of small businesses, as I said earlier, nearly 6 million of them, if we can teach each one of them how to last longer, make more while they're in business, exit more profitably, so get to stage 2, then we have a macroeconomic effect where we can build a sustainable, growing economic engine for the 21st century. So from that point of view, this becomes very important work. All right, by now, I hope I have your attention, and all of you who are owners and managers of SMBs, this section should help you gain insight into issues and opportunities as you grow and develop your business. So here's our next poll, and it's about the revenue size of the audience, which is one of the first things we're going to look at in this next section, because there are different rules that go with different sizes. So let's, again, get to know each other. Let's see where people are size-wise, and that'll tell us a little bit about things that you need to be doing at each stage. And then after we get through that, we're going to look at within generational considerations. So within generations, there are specific things we need to be doing. And then we're going to look at generation transfers and what you need to be thinking about in terms of making sure that the business can actually transfer from one generation to the next. So while you're working on your poll, I'm going to go to the next slide. So size rules. At $0 to $1 million of revenue, this is what we call the never enough stage. And in this stage, you want to focus on growth, sales. You want to grow at least 20% a year. You want to get out of the car. What does that mean? Owners at this stage tend to be hands-on. They're very much involved in the business. They're out in the field running around, running back to the office, working with customers. That's great, but you have to get out of the car, get out of that rat race. Part of your time to start thinking about how you're going to grow and develop the business. One suggestion is think about partnering with someone. So strengthen the business because there are two of you backing the business and working on solutions to grow the business for the future. As much as you can, try to avoid debt in this stage, live within your means. Learn about the balance sheet. This is something that most business owners tell us they're not that comfortable with, but it does have a lot of answers if you understand it. And then learn about what's driving the profit for the business. At the $1 to $2 million stage, it does get much easier to run the business, but it's still all about growing sales. Keep the growth rate up to 15 to 20% a year. Think about acquiring small operators to fuel the growth jump. So look at buying other companies that are very similar to yours or that would bolt onto your business easily. Focus on adding best customers rather than any customers. Get a good bookkeeper. Find someone who can help you generate leads. Assign someone to recruiting. Weed out lowball customers and select good vendors. So get a little pickier with who you're working with. At the next stage, so 2 to 3 million, this is called you can't blow it up. And in this stage, you add to the sales force and you try to keep up with that 15% year-over-year growth rate. Now, the numbers are getting bigger in terms of true dollars, but the percentage you want to try and adhere to 15% year after year. Grow with small acquisitions. Start to think about what's coming next for the business. Find a top quality operations manager. Look at profit per client and profit per product or service. Focus on social media and other marketing. Develop bonus compensation plans that get everyone headed in the same direction. Build reserves for the business rather than distributing all the profits, and practice with budgets and forecasts. So learn to get good at those. Robin, do you want to bring up the polling questions? Do we have enough answers or you want to keep going?
Nope, we're good to bring it up.
Okay, so let's take a look as a group. So the majority of you are actually in that $0 to $2 million range. And I will caution you, push very hard as fast as you can to get up to that $2 million mark. Running the business at that stage just gets so much easier. We have some in the 2 to 6 and 6 to $20 million, which we're going to get to in a minute. And then a little bit of no opinion. All right, let's keep going here. So in the 2 to 6 or $3 to $6 million range, this is where we call what we call owner overload. And you want to work on disciplined, profitable growth at 10% revenue growth year over year and a predefined net income target. So very often at this stage, you're trying to grow so many things in the business, you may lose sight of that net income percentage. And as a business owner, you have to be very demanding and say, look, I'm not going to be satisfied and I'm not going to allow us to get away with less than X amount in terms of net income. You want to expand sales and marketing efforts to keep up the growth engine and build forward for what's going to come as the business continues to grow. You want to regularly work on what comes next. So this is the planning stage. You want to improve margins and do that by negotiating with vendors, finding better suppliers, and getting more productive with the people and the work that your people are doing. You want to improve management in every area of the business. You want to start getting the monkey off of the owner's back. Make sure that everything you do is legal. This is the size typically that the business comes up on state and federal radars as a business to dig into, whether it's unemployment or workers' comp audits, or it's compliance with laws, employee laws, state and federal laws. You want to make sure that you're buttoned down, you've got good legal advice, you're not necessarily asking a lawyer who's good at real estate deals to work on business issues. Get a good business attorney, for example. You want to continue to expand your reserves using the profits that you're throwing off. Gain control with budgets and forecasts. So by now you've been practicing with them a while. Now you use them to really get control and run against those budgets and forecasts. And then you want to be thinking about your short and long-term exit plan in order to give focus to the business. In the $6 to $20 million range, this is where you build up management, you build up the tools of the business. First of all, it's essential to keep up with a 10% year-over-year growth rate. Why? Because inflation is going to eat up a chunk of your profits and a chunk of what you're building if you don't keep growing faster than inflation. You want to expand the sales force and hire on-staff marketing so that you're going to be able to continue to fuel that growth in the revenue side. You want to get a controller and upgrade your accounting department, expand operations management, build KPIs for all areas of the business, implement team comp plans. So now everybody is paid based on the company's performance and progress. Invest your reserves. This is the point at which you start putting your money to work, whether it's buying a building, investing in other businesses. This is where the reserves that you've built out, you now have to get good at putting them to work so the money is generating money. And then you clearly want to define your short and long-term exit plan. Even if it's years down the road, at this stage, you want to start thinking about how does it happen. And let me just catch up with you here. So the next way we're going to look at this is we're going to take a look at growing within a generation. And within a generation, there's what we call the early stage, mid stage, and maturity stage of each generation. So whether it's first, second, third, or fourth generation, same things tend to be true at early, mid, and maturity stages. And then finally, we're going to take a quick look at typical unique features for companies that do last from generation 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Now, our next poll has 2 parts, so let's bring that up. So first of all, what stage is your business in? And then what generation is your business in? And I'm going to start here by laying out the considerations for the early, mid, and maturity stages. So early stage, now think of the years that we've put up here as a general framework. It could be years 1 to 5, it could be years 1 to 15. Don't get too hung up on the numbers or the exact numbers. But in early stage companies, what you want to focus on is figuring out what works, finding the best customers, the best products or services. What do you do well? Where do you do best? And then weed out anything that you would tag as the worst. Experiment with marketing. So there's lots of ways to market a business, and this is where you experiment with all of them. You want to build a stable of people you can trust as advisors to the business, an accountant, an attorney, consultants that you might go to for either project or growth and development advice. You want to assemble inside the company a team of multitaskers. So in the early stage, the business is pretty fluid and people have to back each other up and be able to do lots of different things. You also at this stage do want everyone working though on documenting processes so that you get more routine and more uniform and more consistent with what you're doing. And by all means in this stage, make sure the numbers work. Make sure that what you're doing delivers a profit. And if it doesn't, go back to the drawing board and rework the numbers to make sure that it actually does work. So in the mid stage, which is years 10 to 20 roughly, you want to build depth into the management team. You want to shift from multitaskers to specialists. You want to back away from the front line. You want to move up the client scale and scope. What do we mean by that? So bigger clients, more requests for support, longer or greater opportunity to reap rewards with each client that you have. You want to expand marketing. You want to improve your planning skills. You want to add to technology and systems, and you want to reevaluate the advisors and vendors. So again, as you move from one generation to the next, and you go into the middle stage of any generation, these are the things you want to be working on. So before I go to the next slide, Robin, do we have enough poll responses yet?
Yep, I think we're good.
Okay, let's go. So we have a lot of early stage, some midlife, some maturity stage, and we also are all first generation. Isn't that amazing? All right, well, we'll give you a little information about what might be coming on next, but we'll stay within this focus of the challenges and opportunities of first generation. So as the business transitions within the generation to maturity stage, you want to take time away. As the owner, you want to get out of the way, you want to find out what works, and you want to fix what doesn't. So you take a week off, then you take 2 weeks off, then you take 4 weeks off, and then you take 8 weeks off. A lot of times when I talk with business owners about this, their response is, I haven't had 2 weeks off in a row, and I can't remember the last time. Well, this is where you want to, if you haven't started doing it up to this stage, this is absolutely where you want to be doing it, because you have to let the people inside the business take over, take hold, and fix the problems, and then find out what else you need to be doing for training. Within the company, you want to encourage entrepreneurial thinkers. You want to build a 5 to 10 year financial roadmap for the business so we can see how it plays out over time and then measure progress against that roadmap. Reevaluate positions, look at key player succession. Who's good at what? Which job are they in? Are they in the right seat on the bus? Do they belong on the bus? And then how do people grow and develop over time? Never hesitate to bring in new blood. Always bring in new blood. This helps refresh and bring in new ideas to the business. You also want to, in this stage, be preparing the managers, the next generation of owners and managers. So who's going to step up and what role are they going to play? And then you also, at this point, want to define your exit strategy and your team of advisors. So a lot of business owners will say, well, you know, it seems a little early. I don't plan on getting out of here. And most of us don't actually plan on getting out of here. But the reality is something like 40% of businesses never survive a transition. They never actually get a transition offer. And the reason for that is because nobody was working on it 5, 10 years ahead of the time that it might happen. And then across all of the 3 stages, you want to make sure that you do continuous work to build a strong, vibrant company. And that would include mapping your chain of command, defining everyone's backup, establishing team meetings so that everybody knows what's going on, perfecting individual accountability so you know that people are standing up and they know what's expected of them, having regular, clear reviews and backing that up with training plans, using reports to document what's going on, communicating within and across the teams, and then getting coaching to accelerate progress in every area of the business. Now, even though we're all generation 1, let me tell you what does lie ahead. So generation 1 entrepreneurs characterized by saying, I'm in it, I'm on it, get out of my way, I'll make it happen. That's the owner's mantra. And what you have to do in this stage is learn to step back, train, delegate, teach other people to do, and then let them do. Generation 2 tends to be the administrator's generation. Very often this is the children or the employees that have stepped up to run the business. And these people are brought in to protect the legacy and vision of the founder of the business. And in order to be successful, this generation actually has to create their own vision or re-entrepreneur the business. So they have to run it in their own vision. Generation 3, we call shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. So generation 1 was shirt sleeves, did without in order to build the business. Generation 3, we go right back there. This is often what we call the cousins generation. So this is people who have been affiliated with the business over time, come in if the business isn't sold to outsiders. They are often accustomed to wealth and privilege because generation 2 was pretty profitable. And this generation has to learn financial responsibility. They have to learn accountability. And you also, as a company, have to keep significant reserves inside the business and not be distributing them too much to outsiders. Generation 4, this is where you have a family board, absentee owners, multi-generational owners, and often called the blind faith and misplaced confidence stage with entitlement challenges. So there's a lot of discussion and disruption about who gets what, who should be saying what, and who should be doing what. In this stage, you want to let the managers manage, learn the business if you're going to come in as a player from the business, from the bottom to the top, and at the board level, make sure that you have agreement to limit obligations to pay non-working shareholders. I had one client that the non-working shareholders were taking 50% of the profits of the company every year. Thank heaven, most years the company was highly profitable, but when the company hit a speed bump, there wasn't enough in reserves because the non-working shareholders had drained the tank. And now not only did the company suffer, but the non-working shareholders did as well because there were no more dividends. So let's take the next poll. We're going to now talk about identifying the future team of the business. So if you were to transfer the business, who would the likely next generation of owners be? And give us an answer. Let me just talk you through the choices. So when it comes to identifying the future team of the business, you have 3 basic categories. Family members, although I would caution you that if you ask kids today, do they want the business? 70% of them will say, no, I'd rather have the money. Employees is a category that is often highly overlooked. Think about it. The employees have the best understanding of the business. They have the biggest incentive for wanting to keep the business going, so they keep their jobs. But most often, they do not have the skills to run the business, and the owner perceives that they don't have the assets to buy the business. Actually, neither one of those is true or needs to be true. There are ways to solve both of those problems. And then finally, in terms of outside buyers, there's the folks that want to buy a business to come in and run it. So they want to be in the business. And then there are the private equity folks who are looking to come in and have a financial stake that they can flip. Often private equity doesn't work out very well, although I will tell you, we're told by business owners that they get calls all the time from private equity groups saying, I've got money that wants to invest in your business, let's talk. Be careful, a lot of those calls are nothing more than boiler rooms and scam calls. And if you think about how private equity worked, just look how it played out for Lord and Taylor. For each of those groups, regardless of who you intend to go after, what you want to do is look at building the WIFM. So what's in it for me for each group? You want to test the value in that group. So how much does each one of those groups value the business? Create awareness among the group that your business is here and the opportunity exists to acquire it, and then assess the reality of how likely a transition might be to happen and what has to be done to make it a reality. So Robin, do we have answers to this poll question?
Yep.
Okay, great. So right now, here's what you think. I'm going to share it with mix, current owners, employees, outside buyers. I'm really pleased to see nobody's talking about private equity. And I'm not surprised to see that there's a chunk of people who haven't really thought much about it. And that's pretty normal. Most business owners delay the question far too long and then are in a scramble to put together an outcome with not enough time to make it happen. All right, let's take a look at generation transfers in terms of saleable tools. So when you get ready to transfer the business, here are the tools you want to bring to the table that will make the business more saleable. Documentation. How do you do what you do so that it can be replicated? The next owner can come in with confidence that they can actually do what you've been doing. You want a trained workforce that, again, will stick around. So think about golden handcuffs to keep key players in the business, and documentation on how to train people so that the workforce can continue to perform. You want to establish accountability, reliability, and repeatability. If I'm buying your business, I want to know that the business works, that I'm not getting into too many risks or challenges. And then always focus on opportunities for growth. So be ready to talk to a future buyer about, you could go here, you could go here, you could do this, you could do that. So not only is it you're buying today, but here's the pathway to the future and increased outcomes for the business. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're matching the right buyer and seller targets. So if my company is really good at sales, I might want to go look at a company that's really good at operations to acquire me, so that they're looking for somebody who can go sell more of their products, and I've got the sales force to do it, or vice versa. If I'm really good at doing what I do, then I might want to look at a company that's good at sales and is looking for something else to sell in order to put their sales force more to work, or their marketing more to work. Lastly, when it comes to generational transfers, you want to prepare to achieve the right financial results for yourself and for your family. And to do that, you want to establish your personal portfolio needs. So how much do you need or want to have when it comes time to retire? And a financial planner can help you develop those metrics. And then within that, what role does your company play in terms of having to deliver dollars into that personal portfolio? You want to identify opportunities to grow profit between now and then, which will increase the value of your business and also increase the likelihood that you'll get the number that you want when you're ready to sell. You want to get valuations done regularly so that you understand how you're building the value of the business over time. So if you think about it like having a house, and periodically you probably run into town, get a cup of coffee, talk to a local realtor. How's the real estate market doing? How's my business, or how's my company doing? You want to do the same thing with your business, except there isn't a local set of realtors to talk to so easily, and not so many houses that you can identify. So instead you do it through valuations that can benchmark you against other companies in your market. You want to perfect the business on 3 years of tax returns. What do I mean by that? Well, tax returns are the only document that the owners of privately held businesses deal with, that when they sign it, if they lie on it, they go to jail. And because of that, buyers consider tax returns to be a very good metric of how the business has performed up to now. I oftentimes will see business owners say, but there's this extra pile of cash that comes in the door on the side. And most buyers will highly discount or not allow that as well, because you can't prove it. And then lastly, build contingency plans. So look at what triggers shorter or longer time frames. So in terms of COVID, a lot of companies went into 2021 expecting to sell. We have a lot of baby boomers who are getting down to the end of their generation of ownership, getting ready to exit. And this year may not be the year they're going to do it. And they're now on a setback of several years. So they've got to rebuild their balance sheets, rebuild their client portfolio, and reestablish how the business is performing. So you've got to be prepared with contingency plans and have an idea of when to pull the trigger. I know that there are a lot of companies that are now saying, you know what, I wish I had pulled the trigger last year. Well, you can't go back and roll the tape. You're stuck with the one that you've got. The last thing, coming back to this 3 year of tax returns, I also want to emphasize that most business owners, when they work on their taxes, the first thing they say to their accountant is, how much can you save me on taxes? Well, that works in the early years of the business, but in the later years of the business is sold based on profits. So you want to make sure that you are actually demonstrating profits and paying on the returns, the taxes to prove it, and that you can document where the business could be more profitable if you took out the shareholder outlier costs. So things that the next owner won't necessarily have to pay on. Now let's go to our second to last poll and talk about connections that you'd like to make. So if you can fill this one in, we're going to work very hard at helping you to get information that you're looking for and help you to make the connections you'd like to make. We've given you a bunch of suggestions here. And as you look at this question, I'm just going to take a minute to talk about the role of consulting. And when it comes to looking for a consultant to work with your firm, you have a lot of options. And there are lots of different kinds of consultants out there. I remember when I started my business 25 or so years ago, I was astounded at how many different kinds of consultants there were out there. So first of all, there's types of work. You'll find project consultants. So they'll come in, they'll do a project for you, they'll deliver the project, they'll bolt it onto your company. You won't necessarily know a lot about how that project got developed or how to develop it, but you'll have it to use. It's a tool. And that would be different from consultants who come in to provide you an education. So I want to get better at how I do something, and I want to get better at how I perform. Then look for consultants who can work on the education side. Just make sure that they're consultants who can come in to teach you something that you don't already know how to do. So the most common thing I hear from business owners is, I already know how to do the business of my business. I don't need a consultant coming in to teach me more about that. And I would absolutely agree. I think a lot of money gets wasted on that one. There are turnarounds versus building a future consultant. So turnarounds, these are people that do really tough work. The business is in trouble and they're coming in to figure out what's left in terms of the balance sheet, how to pay off as much of the loans as they can, and either how to get the business and the owner untangled or back on, if it's possible, get it back on track. And that would be very different from the building a future consultants. These are people who are working with companies that are in reasonably good shape and are looking to use what they've got, the foundation that they have, to start building towards a future. And then the third kind of work is the difference between internal and financial fixes versus growth and development programs. So on the internal and financial fixes, this would be people who are working with the business at this point in time and how to get a little more efficient with it. This would be your accounting firms, ISO firms that are going to come in and work with you operationally, versus growth and development. These tend to be more the strategists. Where are you going with the business from here? What market opportunities exist? How's the world going to change? And how are you going to fit within that world? So before I go on to the next two parts of this slide, Robin, do we have answers on this slide or do we want to keep going?
Yep, we have answers.
Okay, great. So connections I'd like to make. Great, lots of different requests, and what we'll do is do our best to try and match up people with advice and get you advice on where to go look for this stuff. If you want to tell us anything in particular that you have as background or expertise that you'd like to let people know about, you can do that in the chat box and we'll take note of that. If you want to share knowledge, so I as a business owner, I'm good at this and would be happy to tell somebody else about that. Feel free to use the chat box to do that. Let me come back to this second box here, the role of strategy. So I'm going to tell you a little story. Before you hire a consultant, you do have to figure out a bit about where you want to go with this consultant. So I'll tell the story about Alice in Wonderland. So think of Alice as the business owner and the white rabbit as the consultant. And Alice is standing in a pool of tears and she's got a bunch of keys in her hand, and the white rabbit comes hopping along and says, "Oh my goodness, dear, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" And Alice says, "Well, I don't know what door to go through, and I don't know what choice in terms of these keys and these doors to make." And the white rabbit says to her, "Well, where do you want to go?" And she says, "Well, that's part of the problem. I don't know." And then the white rabbit says, "Well, then it doesn't really matter, does it?" And Alice proceeds to unlock a door and ends up with the Red Queen instead of being on a pathway to get back up out of the rabbit hole and go home. So it doesn't really matter is something for business owners to be very, very careful about when thinking about what they want from a consultant. You also want to, not only do you want to know where you're going and why you're trying to get there and do a little bit of that thinking ahead of time, but you also want to get documentation from the consultant about how they go about getting results that would serve those needs. So you don't want a consultant who's going to make it up for the first time on your back and experiment on you. So expect that consultant to show documentation on how they plan to get results and where they've done it before, and then get references to back it up. The next is the role of payoff. So if you can't make money on a consulting engagement, I would suggest don't even do it. This has to be a payoff, and it has to be a significant payoff. And part of that equation is also asking pre-engagement, not only what's the payoff and how can you help me figure that out, but how long is this engagement going to last? Because there's also this joke in the consulting industry: when did you get rid of your consultant? When I fired them. And it happens more times than you'd think. And that's not how you want the engagement to end up. So lastly, how do you figure out when consulting is right for you? Here are some typical reasons to reach out and look for help. Business is stalled in one or more areas. There are problems that keep showing up. You run out of ideas. You're not sure what to do next. You need conflict management so the kids aren't playing nice in the sandbox together. You need some education, or you need to practice at something. You need coaching to improve accountability. These are just a few of the reasons. Why consultants? Well, as one of our clients said, it's a lot cheaper than bringing on a partner. And if they're good, they can help me move the needle fast. And when I'm done with them, I can let them go and I don't have to continue to pay for them. I can use them to evaluate and resolve big issues that I can't seem to overcome on my own. A little bit of a commercial here for strategy leaders. So what we do at Strategy Leaders, we lead companies forward, both owners and their teams. We build game plans to fix problems and grow the business. We figure out where the value is and isn't. We build thriving companies run by confident owners and managers. We assess needs, bring people in terms of, or bring in both people, tools, and systems. We train, coach, educate, resolve conflicts, and build accountabilities, create wealth for our clients, prepare the next generation so that the company does survive, and assist with ownership opportunities and transitions. Those would be the big ones for us. So what do we do at Strategy Leaders? To sum up, we're an experienced team of employees. We've been around 25 years. We work and live to breathe our values every day, every client. And those values are delivering for our clients growth, profit, stability, predictability, and peace of mind. And going back to what Brochet taught me when I was going to Columbia, we're working to build a 21st century US-centric successful economy, one successful business at a time. We have a great reputation because we're really selective about working for the right client at the right time and for the right reason. We do have a free diagnostic process that helps us and the people we're talking to figure out if we should be working together. And for any business owners attending today, I would be happy to extend an opportunity to go through diagnostics to see what that would look like for your business. At this point, I do have one last poll question. So if you can throw that up on the screen, Robin. And let me take a minute to so if you would just rate this webinar on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is low, 10 is high. How would you rate this compared to other webinars that you've been to? And then I do want to take a minute to tell you that we do have upcoming topics: exiting the business, growth by acquisition, putting sales into high gear, how to build a dashboard and an effective plan, how to build KPIs, managing and motivating today's employees, meeting and managing customers' expectations. And I would suggest you keep a lookout for emails on upcoming webinars from Jeff and the rest of the team at Strategy Leaders. And with that, I want to thank you for coming. I know we're pretty close to our time line. I'm happy to stay and take a few questions. Robin, do we have any questions from the audience that we want to get into at this point?
We have a couple questions.
Okay, great.
So I'll let people vote while you're answering these questions.
Go right ahead.
My industry still has a lot of uncertainty. How do I best forecast in this environment?
Great question. I was actually talking with a client of ours this morning about this, and the way that he described it, I thought was really, really important. He said it's like flying a plane. I know which airport I'm going to next, and I have a couple of different runways that I can use to get off the ground, and a couple of runways that I can land on between here and my final destination, so I can pivot quickly from one runway to another if things are changing. Now, to answer that question, you probably need to do a lot of research. So where is my company in terms of its industry? What's the outlook for this industry? How stressed is this industry likely to be over the next 1, 2, 3 years? So for example, we work a lot with construction companies. Right now they're flourishing. Most of the ones we're working with, they say, look, I'm expecting a good run for the next 2 to 3 years, but I'm also starting now to plan on when we turn to the other side of that cycle. If you're in, so there are industry segment answers. There are also size answers. So if I'm at 1 to 2 to 3 million, I can probably pivot more quickly, and I've got to decide, am I going to try and pivot based on acquiring businesses or building sales and marketing prowess, or doing a little bit of both. And some of that will depend on how many risks there are to acquiring other businesses and how risky is this industry. Robin, you got another question?
Yeah, so how do you start the conversation with your employees about them potentially taking over?
Oh, I love that question. So you started out with, look, someday I'm not going to be here. And we need to practice for that reality. And the reason we need to practice for that reality is so that on the days when I'm not here, you feel comfortable and confident and able to take on ownership of the part of the business that you're responsible for. And you've got team members who are also up for the same game. I don't want to just come to a day where I say, look, I'm going out the door and leave a pile of problems in your lap. At the same time, I will tell you, one of my dreams would be that someday you guys might want to own the business. If that's the case, I'm more than happy to start that conversation with you and talk about ways that we might get from here to there. And I would encourage you to think about that, because we know that business ownership is or can be a great path to wealth. Certainly, it can also be a path to risk. And my goal is to build a business that you have the advantages I didn't have, which is an established business that has less risk than what I had to go through and a much stronger ability to perform just because it's already there.
Great. And then we have one more. I know we're almost out of time, but some of our employees are thriving at home while others don't. How do you help to motivate employees that struggle if we don't plan on being back in the office anytime soon?
Oh, yeah, this is a tough one. So you got to decide, are we going back or are we not? And for each company, that's a very personal decision. In this case, your decision is we're not going to go back. So there are a couple things that you can do. One, make sure that you've got just top-notch communication tools. Are people able to talk to each other all day long? And then monitor how people are engaging with those communication tools. So who's actually using them and who's not present at all, and get coaching for those people who aren't present. First of all, make sure they're showing up for work. And then secondly, get them to be more comfortable communicating in a typing environment rather than an auditory environment or a visual environment. And then build the auditory and visual tools. So do a lot of Zoom meetings. So expect that people will show up for Zoom meetings, and don't let them get away with turning off the video on their camera. If they don't have video on their camera, then get them video capabilities. It's better that they have a tool and they have to show up and they have to look each other in the eyeball than letting them slide. Think about having an EAP program, an employee assistant program, because a lot of times we know that people are actually stressed in general. And it's everything from financial well-being and comfort and confidence about how's the economy playing out personally, to trying to take care of kids while you're trying to do work. to knowing whether your job is going to be there. So as a business owner, I would talk with each person individually. What are the concerns that you're worried about? And how can I help you to get over those concerns or get through those concerns? I would think about having quote unquote get-togethers. So coffee clashes, get together in the morning for 10 minutes as a department or as a company overall. Everybody shows up, we all have coffee together and we just chat. What's going on? Who's doing what? And make sure that you mentor the people who are generally really quiet. Have somebody that's going to help them get their voice and learn how to have their voice. You also want to think about when you come back, maybe getting a meeting place so that you have like a WeWorks where you can gather 4 smaller meetings in a safe way. But also you got to be really cognizant of employees who may not be comfortable meeting with other employees, and you got to be willing to accommodate that. So you may have mixed meetings that some people are face-to-face and some people are participating by laptop or by video screen. Think about where and how everybody in your company is set up for computer capability so that they have the tools they need and it is both visual and auditory. That would be some of the best recommendations I could make. And with that, I see that we are at our time limit. I want to be respectful and let all of you go. If anyone does want to stay on for another question or two, I'm happy to stick around and take another question. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your feedback. I'm really glad that you came today, and I hope that your journey towards building a successful, privately held SMB continues to unfold to your happiness and joy.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.